Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. Aela the Huntress is the unconquerable soul, unyielding, unbreaking, untamed, not born into the companions, but consumed by them. A woman claimed by the hunt, running through the world not as herself, but as legacy made flesh. And beneath the stoic exterior lies a complex interplay of inherited roles and personal desires, a psychological tapestry woven with threads of loyalty, autonomy, and the primal call of the wild. Aela was raised in Jorvaskr, beneath Ysgramor's banners in the shadow of ghost stories made flesh. While other children played, Aela was learning to fight, track, and kill. She was taught to revere the bloodlines of the past more than the uncertainties of the future. She didn't stumble into the companions. She was a companion before she had a name worth remembering. The ideas that shaped her were not questioned, they were inherited. Honor was not debated, but it was defined by those who stood beside her. And when the circle offered her the beast blood, she didn't hesitate. She drank. Not out of desperation, not for power, but because this was what came next. It was the natural conclusion to a life that had never diverged. She is a Nord by blood, companion by breath, and werewolf by choice, but in truth, she's never lived a day outside the skin of someone else's legacy. Her story doesn't begin with transformation. It begins with absorption into the pack, into the code, into the hunt. Aela is often praised for her clarity, her unwavering sense of who she is. But that clarity didn't come from self-discovery. It came from identity foreclosure. In psychology, foreclosure happens when someone adopts an identity before they've ever questioned it. No exploration, no crisis, just acceptance. This is who we are. This is what we do. Aela didn't build her identity, she inherited it. Passed down through bloodlines and burned into her by tradition. She was raised not just by warriors, but by a creed. The companions didn't give her a home, they gave her shape. And she never looked back long enough to ask if it was truly hers. Her strength, pride, and purpose, they're all real. But they were chosen for her long before she could choose anything else. The second trait is one that defines her posture, her tone, and her silence. It is her stoic disposition. Aela doesn't grieve openly. She doesn't share fear or sorrow or regret. When Skjor, her dearest friend, her hunting companion, her potential lover, dies, she doesn't weep. She hunts. When Kodlak falls, she mourns in action. She doesn't ask for comfort. She asks for a target. This isn't malevolence. It's stoic objectivity. Stoic personalities operate on one principle. Feel nothing, endure everything. Pain becomes duty. Emotion becomes silence. Weakness is a luxury she's never allowed herself. Her stoicism makes her formidable, but it also hides the possibility that there's more beneath. Not a softer Aela, just a more complicated one. And the third trait is the most invisible, yet the most powerful. Enmeshment. If foreclosure explains how Aela's identity was formed, early and unquestioned and inherited, then enmeshment explains why she clings to it so fiercely. Aela isn't just loyal to the companions, she is fused with them. There's no boundary between who she is and what they are. Their values are her values, their enemies, her enemies. Their honor, her lifeblood. When she refuses the cure for lycanthropy, it's not rebellion, it's preservation. To let go of the beast is to let go of the bond, of Skjor, of the circle, of everything that defines her. Enmeshment is not obedience, it's identity by proximity. It's the loss of me in the service of us. And Aela has never lived outside the emotional gravity of her pack. Together, these three traits form the spine of Aela's psychology. A foreclosed identity she never questioned. A stoicism that channels emotion into action. And a bond so deep with her clan that she can no longer see where they end and she begins. She's not lying when she says she knows who she is. She's just never had the chance to wonder if she could be anything else. Aela doesn't fear death. She fears the silence that comes after. The kind where no song is sung in your name, and no pack howls for your memory. She fears fading, not failing. When your identity is built without exploration like hers, there's a quiet terror beneath the surface. What if this isn't really who I am? And what if I don't know how to be anything else? But she never asked that question aloud, because to question it is to risk unraveling. This is the curse of identity foreclosure, confidence without foundation, a house built on inherited stone, never tested against the storm. She clings to the hunt, to the companions, to the beast blood, not only because she loves them, but because she is them, because she can't afford to exist without them. If she loses these things, there's nothing left, just questions she's never dared to ask. Beneath her stoicism lies another fear, not that she'll break, but if she ever lets herself feel, she won't know how to stop. That the pain she's buried, Skjor's death, Kodlak's disappointment, her own unspoken doubts, might breach the surface and leave her exposed. So she stays silent. She channels it. To Aela, vulnerability isn't just dangerous. It's foreign. Her fear isn't emotion itself. It's what emotion might reveal. And then there's the fear that comes from enmeshment. The fear of separation. Not loneliness, not exile, but being unbound. Of waking up one day with no pack, no code, no hunt, and realizing she doesn't know who she is without them. This is why she refuses the cure, why she stays in your Vasker, why she never truly leaves the shadow of Ysgramor's throne. Because if the companions move on and she doesn't, what does that make her? Her greatest fear isn't defeat. It's becoming a relic. The last wolf still circling the fire, long after the pack has gone cold. Aela's soul is split between loyalty and becoming. She stands tall because she never questioned her place, but there's the conflict. Identity foreclosure gave her clarity, not truth. She didn't wrestle with herself. She simply became what was handed to her. And deep beneath the steel and fur, there's a tension she never names. What if my path is carved from someone else's bones? And what if I followed it so long, I forgot how to weave it? She doesn't admit this, not even to herself, because to question it would mean pulling at a thread that holds her together. So she stays the course, but the course was never hers to set. Her stoicism, too, is a double-edged sword. She endures, she commands, she hunts without flinching, but this comes at a cost. A denial of grief, of longing, and of doubt. Her way of life demands silence in the face of sorrow. But silence doesn't kill emotion, it buries it, like a carcass under snow, waiting for the thaw. Skjor's death didn't fracture her, it calcified her. She didn't say goodbye, she said, "Where are they?" And every moment since has been a quiet war between pain and duty unbroken. To the world, she looks unshaken. But in truth, she's a woman carrying everything, sharing nothing, and trusting that the hunt will be loud enough to drown what aches inside. She resembles Brutus as he takes no time to mourn the death of his friend Cassius and the tragedy of Julius Caesar. He remarks briefly, "The last of all the Romans, fare thee well. It is impossible that ever Rome should breed thy equal. Friends, I owe more tears to this dead man than you shall ever see me pay. I shall find time, Cassius. I shall find time." But her deepest conflicts come from enmeshment, the way she's woven into the companions so tightly she can no longer tell where they end and she begins. She fears the day the companions change, the day they lay down their beast blood, their vengeance, their edge. Because Aela is not just part of that legacy, she is that legacy. If the circle walks away from the hunt, what becomes of the one who still runs? And so she remains, claws out, back turned to the cure, not because she despises the others for leaving, but because their departure pulls at the threads of her very self. Aela is torn between movement and stillness, between the need to carry her legacy forward and the dread that she can't exist without it. She does not speak this war aloud. She only runs harder. And if you ask her why she still wears the beast, why she still prowls the old paths, she won't give you an answer. Because the truth is simple. She doesn't know who she is without the circle. And part of her fears she never will. Some wolves bare their teeth at the world, but Aela, she's beginning to bare hers at the thought of being anything other than the beast. Aela's first line of defense is suppression, the burying of emotion beneath duty. In the wake of death or doubt, she doesn't speak, she acts. Pain becomes orders, grief becomes vengeance, questions become silence. It's not that this proud Nord warrior doesn't feel the pain of Skjor and Kodlak's deaths. It's that she won't let those feelings surface where anyone can see them, including herself. She also leans on rationalization, telling herself that the blood she spills, the path she follows, the tradition she clings to, they're all right because they are honorable, because they're old, because they're hers. But this is not wisdom. They're emotional strongholds, strongholds that must not fall. And beneath it all is identification, a defense rooted in enmeshment. Aela doesn't just admire the companions, she is them. She echoes their values, their rage, their code until her voice is no longer hers alone. It's the pack speaking through her. The spirit of the beast and the warrior howling as one. And the moment she begins to question it, even in private, that voice starts to splinter. The steel that she is made of won't bend, but it will break. Aela moves like a woman who knows her place in the world because she's never dared to imagine another. She speaks in quipped phrases that are rarely emotive and always focused. "Are you on the hunt?" she asks. Not "how are you?" Because in her world, motion is meaning. To pause is to think, and to think is to unravel. She walks with the bearing of Ysgramor's bloodline, but lives with the weight of their expectations on her shoulders. She trains relentlessly, fights without hesitation, hunts not for coin or thrill, but for something older. The sacred rhythm of pursuit, where life makes sense only when something is bleeding in the snow. When grief comes, she doesn't mourn, she avenges. When loneliness creeps in, she silences it with steel. And when the others choose healing, she chooses memory, memory bound in fur and fang. She shows loyalty the way a wolf does, fiercely, wordlessly, and without compromise. But that loyalty has a cost. She is slow to trust outsiders, slow to change, and slower still to question the elders and oaths that shaped her. Not because she lacks thought, but because she fears where those thoughts might lead. In her story, self-reflection is not a virtue, it is a threat. And if she stops long enough to look inward, she might see the truth. That her identity was forged in someone else's fire, and the person beneath the shield has never been allowed to breathe. So she runs, she hunts, she endures, not as Aela, but as a companion, as the hunt itself. Aela the Huntress walks the world as if she chose this path, but the truth is colder. This path was laid before she ever learned to walk. She is the hunt, the fang, the legacy, but never the question. Her strength is not a mask, it's real, but it's also survival. Forged by identity foreclosure, her selfhood is welded to the bones of the companions. Through Stoic silence, she smothers doubt in duty. And through enmeshment, she's given up the right to stand apart. Because standing alone would mean standing undefined. She is loyal beyond question, but that loyalty has cost her the freedom to ask why. She is fierce beyond reckoning, but that ferocity hides a heart that has never had the space to wonder if it was made for anything more than the next kill. She is the last one running, not because she's the strongest, but because she cannot stop. To cure herself would be to leave the pack. To leave the pack would be to lose herself. And to lose herself would be to face the one truth she's never dared to hunt. That she may not know who she is, because she's never needed to. Because the hunt was always louder than the silence. Aela is not broken. She is complete. Not by discovery, but by design. Unlike Serana, who was sealed in stone, forced into darkness by family and fate, and had identities forced upon her that she never asked for, Aela is the anti-type of this. Aela ran, blade and bow drawn, to an externally imposed identity. She saw the path laid out by tradition, by blood, by the voices of dead warriors, and she chose to follow it without hesitation. And one day, Aela will die as she lived, chasing blood through snow, too proud to look back. And when her body breaks, she will not cry out. Her scene will be waiting, not with comfort, not with peace, but with the only reward she ever sought, being welcomed as a wolf into the eternal coven on hallowed hunting grounds.